Okay. All right. So we are very lucky today to have Heidi Hackemer, who is, when we're talking about real world branding, Heidi knows her stuff. She's been involved with, Super Bowl commercials, the building of brands that, no one understands. I'm thinking of Oatly, a milk that just a fantastic story that we'll talk about this semester, but we haven't talked about it yet. So, man, we can learn from one of the creative drivers behind that and the other companies. So, first question that I'd like to ask is maybe talk a little bit about who you are and your career, and introduce yourself to our students.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm really excited to be here. So thanks for having me. This is always fun. Okay, so I'll start since you're working with students. I'll start where I start. I started at University of Wisconsin-Madison. I grew up in Wisconsin, so went to Madison. Go Badgers. Um, and when I was at school, I studied English literature and advertising, so I got 2 degrees. Um, and after that, I went to New York City. While I was in college, I did the National Student Advertising Competition. I don't know if that still exists or not, but that was a really good way for me to kind of get my feet into the industry. I did some internships when I was in college as well. And then I moved to New York City in terrible timing. I moved to New York City August 2001. So
Ooh.
about 2 weeks before September 11th, I moved to the city. And in some ways, I feel like I can relate to some of the anxiety that students have right now because when September 11th happened, the entire advertising industry shut down and agencies didn't hire for 2 years. And so I waited tables for 2 years in New York City and really was questioning whether I was ever going to get into the industry, if it was ever going to happen for me. I mean, it was a fun time, but it was also, it's fun being a server in New York City. Like, you see the city at night. It's
We
basically,
love New York. We do.
but also, that it was really rattling from a career standpoint. I started out at FCB New York as a copywriter. I did that for 2 years and I realized I really did not like copywriting and it wasn't something that I was very good at. But there was this discipline that I had never heard about in college called strategy or planning. And there were all these amazing strategists at FCB New York. In fact, they had a very big department. And so I worked my way over there and then I stayed there for a couple of years. Then I went to London for a couple of years. Then I came back to New York for a couple of years. And when I was about 31 years old, I had just worked on a really big campaign launch for Google. It was the first time that Google had ever done a global campaign. So I was flying all over the world, getting people to adopt the campaign that our team made in New York. So I was going to Tokyo, I was going to Sao Paulo, I was over in London and doing that type of stuff. And one day I'm sitting at my desk in New York and my career's like going up, right? Like I'm definitely in an ascendant moment in my career. And this voice popped into my head, and the voice said, buy a truck and drive around America. And it really was like this very strong voice. And so within a month, I had quit my job, subletted my apartment, bought a Ford F-150, kitted out the Ford F-150, and started driving west. And for about 2 years on and off, but mostly on, I lived in the truck. This is before van life, so it was not considered something aspirational or pretty. People were like, "Have you lost your mind?" Right? And I drove around the country for 2 years. And I would come back and I would freelance. So I would freelance at agencies like, I mean, I was freelancing like Anomaly and Droga, and I quit from BBH New York. Um, and I realized that I really loved the practice of brand strategy, but I didn't really love advertising. And my hypothesis was that everything that we do as brand strategists, which is to understand the world around us from many different dimensions and understanding how that intersects with the company, that could actually be put to use to helping companies be better and do better, not just make advertising campaigns. So I came back to New York and I started one of the first shops that only did brand strategy that was disconnected from advertising. And at the time, people were like, you're never going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to make money. It's impossible. Now there's a lot of shops that do just that. But at the time, there wasn't. Ran that shop for a while. weirdly got called in to do some volunteering advising work with the White House, which was very unexpected. From that, got offered a job at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, which is Mark Zuckerberg's philanthropy. And I went to the West Coast and I left my company and I set up their engagement discipline there. That didn't work out. And then ended up at Oatly, where I set up their North American creative organization and then also set up their futures lab. And then after 3 years at Oatly, I went back and now I'm doing my own direct to client consulting, which truly is my happy space. And I'm feeling very good about things right now. So that's the longer story of the arc. And I think in what I'm trying to illustrate is that I have had a very nonlinear career. I have taken a lot of strange turns in my career, taken a lot of risk in my career. And there's been several moments where it would have been so much easier for me just to like stay on the path or like work my way up the ladder. Um, but I am more motivated by challenge and by freedom and by trying different things. And that is really the marker of how I've lived my life and done my career. And long way of saying, everyone, we're going to be fine. You may not know what the path is going to look like. Like if you told me that this was going to be my path when I was 25 years old, I wouldn't have believed you, honestly. I really thought that I was going to hook into an ad agency and I was going to ride that sucker all the way up to global CSO somewhere and be like a powerhouse in advertising. Um, and life took me in different directions and it's been really beautiful. It's been great.
Now, one thing that I know I'm not sure my students know, what is what is this a strategist? The strategist role, is
Yeah.
that specific to an ad agency? Because again, here I teach marketing strategy. We talk about brand strategy. What is a strategist job and who hires strategists and what do they do?
Right. It's a great question. So most every agency will have strategists embedded in them. And I always say that the strategists are the first deliverable on a project. And so a strategist sets the tone for the project. And basically there's at its simplest is that a client will give you their brief for what they think needs to be done. The strategist receives that brief, digs into it more, digs into who are the people that we're really trying to address with this brief, what's really going on with the company that we can leverage, what's going on in the competition, what do we have to be aware of, what are movements that are going on in culture. And what I just laid out for you is the 4 C's. The 4 C's is consumer, culture, competition, client. You investigate that and you create what you think the work needs to be doing and saying, and you create that strategy, that pathway in a way that is really inspiring and evocative so that the clients can not only get excited about where they could potentially be and go, but all the creators can get really excited about what they need to be communicating and how they need to be thinking about media and ecosystem. So you are the bridge. You're the bridge between the client and the creators.
Now, and so for example, you were involved with creativity, running creative for Oatly
Mhm.
in in the United States of America. And so maybe you could, because I know a little bit about their incredible packaging, but maybe you could talk a little bit about what that, because I don't know if all my students know what that is. They might, because I know like Starbucks now has oat milk as an option to cream or milk. But where Oakley was at the time that you started working with them
Yeah.
and how you helped figure out where they needed to go. I'm curious. And maybe some of the things that your team then worked with your creatives to get out into the world.
Yeah, so Oatly's an interesting one, and Oatly works quite differently than most other creative entities. It's a unique beast. Oatly, first of all, invented oat milk in 1994. It was the first company ever to figure out oat milk and that you could create a milk-like substance from oats. So that's kind of interesting. And from 1994 until 2014, Oatly was a what I would call like a Birkenstock hippie brand. Like it was like only in like health food stores in Sweden. It was not mainstream at all. And so the board brought in Tony Peterson, who to be the CEO, who then brought in John Schoolcraft to be the chief creative officer. And John was the one, along with a couple other guys, Martin and Lars and a few others, was the one who really created this creative system and creative presence that we know as Oatly today. And the first thing that they did was they said they didn't have a lot of money, right? Because it was not a very, wasn't like a booming oat milk company.
It's a
So
hippie brand.
exactly. And so the first thing they said was, well, what can we control and what's not going to cost us a lot of money to make a statement with? And that was the packaging. And so the first thing they did was they said, how can we create a disruptive packaging experience? Which they did. And they basically broke every rule of packaging. Like there's lots of studies done about what will catch the eye, what colors you should use, what shapes you should use in packaging. They broke every single rule. They were just like, we just want something that's cool, that we like, that we could feel good about. The second thing that they did is, again, they didn't have a lot of money. So they hired people in both Sweden and then later on in the United States to literally go door to door in third wave coffee shops and say, would you try our product? And so the whole strategy of getting it going was to get baristas who were pretty picky about what would go into their lattes to embrace Oatly. The baristas were the ones that said to their customers, this is so much better than almond milk. This is so much better than soy milk. You should try it. And then customers started going to the grocery stores, and this was mostly in the United States. I know the US story better. This was mostly in New York City to start. So what would happen is the customers would go to their coffee shop, they get their Oatly, they'd be like, this is amazing. Like, what is going on? They would go to the grocery stores and say, do you sell Oatly? The grocery stores said no. So then the grocery stores started calling Oatly and saying, we need distribution, which never happens. Like it's always a product trying to bang the door of Whole Foods down. And in the case of Oatly, it was the opposite. It was the distribution outlets coming to Oatly and saying, hey, we need your product. So then they started getting momentum, and then they started doing building out the advertising that Oatly is pretty famous for.
So it was classic pull. They
They
pulled
pulled.
Oatly into it. It
They
wasn't
pulled.
pushed down. That's
Mhm.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
And and um and so I guess I know you worked on a Super Bowl ad, so I got to ask, how cool was that? And tell the story behind that because I don't know how many marketers have that opportunity. That's I say that's rarefied air.
it is
A
rare.
lot of So how did that come about? And that's got to be cool. Tell us the story of that.
It was
Because I
pretty
just
cool.
talked about, Super Bowl ads and they're fantastic. They're very impactful. And so that's marketing Super Bowl is Super Bowl
Oh,
night. So how did that come about? And maybe you could tell that story and how successful it turned out to be.
yeah, so I joined Oatly in September of 2020. So Oatly in the United States really picked up momentum in 2017, 2018. And I joined Oatly as it was on this big like zoom up in the United States. And I also joined when they were preparing the company to IPO. So in I joined in September 2020. The media company comes to us and says, hey, like we could run an ad in the Super Bowl. Like we could get a spot, it's in our package, we could buy it. And I was part of the team that was debating whether we should run the spot in the Super Bowl or not. Now, we knew what the spot was going to be, which is unusual because I've also been in agencies where the Super Bowl brief comes in, where a client comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to run in the Super Bowl. We need a spot." And whenever that has happened in an agency, every creative in this agency just like loses their mind to try to be the one that like wins. And usually what happens is literally you will have hundreds of scripts get generated to potentially be the one that gets chosen to be produced for the Super Bowl. Because the other thing with Super Bowl is usually, especially now, there's a lot of norms around Super Bowl advertising. There's usually celebrities, the production is usually insane as far as money goes. And that's the thing,
Yes.
like there's not a like companies don't spend money on production the way they spent money on production when I started 20 years ago. Right. So as a creative, when you get a moment that like, oh my God, you get to have a Super Bowl spot produced, not only are you probably going to get money for celebrities, which you never get, you're also probably going to get money, or influencers, you're going to get money for a great big production. Okay. So this was the opposite. It was, we knew the asset we were going to run. The asset that we ran in the Super Bowl was a spot that was shot on like two dinky cameras in a field for Finland. And it ran for a few weeks in Finland, and then we set the asset aside. It was like a really dumb asset. And that was the thing with Oatly. The question with the advertising was like, whenever I would bring creatives into Oatly, I was like, you have to write and you have to create dumb. We're always looking for the thing that is like so off and so wrong. And so the call that we made is the way that we're going to stand out in the Super Bowl is that we're not going to do high production. And we're not going to use a celebrity. We're not going to make it super flashy. We're going to place in the Super Bowl an anti-Super Bowl commercial. And in doing that, we made it on both the best lists and the worst lists of the Super Bowl, but it definitely created way more buzz than, I mean, look, I think you look at the Super Bowl right now and you basically see two types of spots. You see the absurd celebrity mega production spot, like where things just keep happening that are crazy and strange, or you find the big heartstring spot, like where everyone's trying to make you cry. And those are usually the two main strategies for Super Bowl. And I think it's getting really tired and boring. And we're just like, how do we do something that's totally different? So that's what we did.
Now, what exactly was the spot? I don't remember it.
It
What
was
did, what did you guys do?
it was a our CEO was in an oat field and he was playing a synthesizer
I remember this now.
and he was singing a song, Wow No Cow. And that's it. And he was just singing the song that he made up. And it was just this little synthesizer with a little synth beat. The production was like really washed out. If you look closely at the commercial, like go watch it on YouTube, you'll see we cut into a shot of the oat milk sitting on the synthesizer. Apparently, what happened the day of the production when Tony was playing, and he really is singing and he's really playing the synthesizer because he's a musician. When he was playing the synthesizer, the oat milk carton kept falling off of the synthesizer. So you can see the tape where they like put like duct tape and like smashed it down, and you can see the package is kind of crinkled up a little bit because they were trying to jam it down onto the synthesizer. It is like everything you don't do in creating a Super Bowl spot.
And yet it broke through.
It totally broke through. It absolutely broke through. And the thing that I was most proud of was, as we all know what happens with Super Bowl spots or anything that breaks through, there's like a wave of hate, and then there's a wave of defense that happens online. And so the instant that the commercial went, we released a t-shirt that said, I totally hated that Oatly commercial. And it was a picture of Tony playing the synthesizer. And we offered it to anyone free who filled out a form. And that t-shirt was all grabbed up within like 3 minutes. And then the t-shirt became a second moment on Twitter. Then our defenders were like, you dummies, we've all been punked by Oatly. Like Oatly knew exactly what they were doing. Some people were like, I can't believe marketing professionals put this on the Super Bowl. We're like, you dumbasses, we knew exactly what we were doing, right? And then the t-shirt like kind of added on to the story and the troll.
That's awesome. That's an awesome, awesome
It was
experience. I mean, talking about building brands in the real world.
fun.
I mean, certainly, standing out is differentiating yourself, being distinct is obviously one way to do that.
Yeah.
Um, I'm wondering, other ways that, you've put brand strategies together and taken them to, how you've helped clients either make changes or, built new brands, other ways that you've used your insights to make brands more successful.
I actually just gave a talk about this last week, so this is top of mind for me. I really think there's like three dimensions of differentiation or breakthrough, and brands can do all three, or they can do one of three or two of three. And the three dimensions are, you really build yourself against a value system, and you have a very strong value system that you are pretty like that you are pretty you hone to, that you're quite religious about. So Tony Chocolonely is a very good example of a brand that built its fame through just really hammering the values over and over again. The second dimension is risk. You're willing to take risks and stand out and provoke, even if that means that you're going to lose customers. So a brand that I think's been doing this very well, both when I was younger and now is having a resurgence, is a brand like Diesel, where Diesel's really just leaning into risk and like going for that. And then finally, the third dimension is differentiation. And that's where you have like Duolingos of the world, where you're just kind of being weird for the sake of being weird. And you're standing out and you're just doing things in a funny, funky way that sends a signal into the world that like we just do things differently. And then brands blend them, right? So if you look at a brand like Patagonia, Patagonia is all about values and risk. They have a very strong value set that they hold on to, and they will sue the government. And they have tags on their shirts that say, vote the assholes out. And so they are willing to provoke and poke the bear. And they also lean really hard into their values, especially when you look like their corporate structure and the way that they gave away most of the
Mhm.
company. If you look at a company like Apple, Apple really sits between values and differentiation, at least when it was launched. And I realize most of your students won't remember this, but trust me, so Apple's always been about the creative class and all about like fueling creativity. If you Google the iPads in the 1990s, when those plastic pop colored devices came out, it was shocking to the market, and it was so different, and we had never seen anything like that before. We had never seen anything like an iPod before, right? And that bravery to be different and to send a signal to the world that we're something different is when you're Apple did a really good job of being on that axis between they were really strong about taking care of creative people and they were willing to be different to do it. And Oatly, I would say, did all three. Oatly had a very strong value system around sustainability. When it came to risk, they consistently took on the dairy industry and got sued by the dairy industry multiple times. They would just go poke the bear and like go after the dairy industry. And when you look at what Oatly has done, everything they've done from a packaging, advertising, engagement standpoint, it's all about being weird. It's all about being different. And so that's a great example of a brand that hits all three of those dimensions.
How would you say Liquid Death fills in those dimensions?
Liquid Death, I would say, is way into differentiation. I don't really know. As I look at Liquid Death, does it really take a lot of risk? Does it really have a lot of a strong value statement? I don't think so. But that doesn't mean that it's not interesting in breaking through. It just really went for breakthrough and went on the differentiation side of it.
Yeah, their partnerships are wild.
Yeah, yeah,
The
it's
things
cool.
they
Like
come out with.
they do a lot of really cool stuff for sure.
Now, what advice would you share to students that are thinking of going into branding professionally? What kind of things do smart brand managers do to help their brand succeed? Is there any things that
Well, let me start from like when you're young and you're trying to get in, right? So obviously AI is sweeping through am I frozen? Okay, I'm back.
oh,
Okay.
you're good now?
Okay, good. Obviously AI is sweeping through. Look, it's affecting everyone. It's affecting, I know a lot of people in my age and experience level who are struggling in the world of AI. So like you are not alone in this. This is coming for everybody right now. And we have to be really realistic about that. And we have to adapt to it because it's not going away. It's coming or it's here. Um, so here's what I always look for for people that are entering the industry. Um, I'm looking for you to work your ass off. For better or worse, I worked my ass off when I was in my 20s. And I know we're not allowed to manage like that anymore. Like I know like that's not what we're supposed to be doing.
Work-life balance now.
Life balance, and I get it. And look, I have a lot more work-life balance I've ever had in my career, and the people that work with me do as well. However, there's also we are in client services. I cannot express that enough. We are in client services, and our job is to serve the client. And if you are not comfortable with some of the sacrifices that it takes to be in a client service industry, get out of advertising. Get out. Because if my client called me today and said, Heidi, I need you in an in-person meeting tomorrow in Detroit, because that's where my main client is right now, I'm on the plane to Detroit tomorrow. There's no question. There is no question that I'm on that plane to Detroit. And that's how my entire life has been and my entire career has been. Now, we can go into the emotional conversation about whether that's healthy or not, but like that is client services. That is what you are signing up for. And so your bosses have been living that for 15, 20 years. And it's hard sometimes for us to say, I mean, I've had people say, I can't go on that trip because I paid for a trainer tomorrow. And I'm like, I don't, then you really shouldn't be in this industry. You just shouldn't. Now, I will say, in fairness, it is very rare that you get the phone call 24 hours ahead of time that you need to be on the plane tomorrow. I mean, that is a rare thing. Like I know my travel schedule for the next 2 months. I know where I'm going to be because I've plotted that out with my clients. But I'm on a plane about every week, every other week. Like no question. And I have been that way for the last 20 years.
Wow.
So, like, there's just a reality to this business. Um, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, working in an agency is so fun. It is like, it's
Creative people are awesome.
creative people are awesome. Agencies are awesome, and they're under different pressures and that kind of thing. But one of the things that I do miss, being a lone wolf, is I sometimes miss that camaraderie. And in with my clients, a lot of times I'll be working with their agency of record, and I'll be like, and that's what some of my most fun times. I'll be like, "Can I come work in your office?" Because off, they're just fun, right? Okay, let me go back to where I was starting now. So I'm looking for someone that's going to work hard. I'm looking for somebody who is going to be hungry. Like I can't tell you how many people have shown up to interviews with me in the last 5 years and have not done the basic work of Googling me and figuring out who I am and what are some good questions to ask me. I mean, it's bonkers. And when someone interviews me like that, or like when I'm interviewing somebody and I'm like, hey, it's so I want to make sure you have time, like ask me any questions. And it's so obvious they haven't done their homework, out. You aren't hungry, you don't care, you're gone. Like I'm not interested in having you around, right? Something else that I think is so important for people to get good at is presenting and writing and being able to tell, not just presenting and writing, but being able to write a great presentation that tells a great story. I want you to be working on that now. I don't expect you to know how to do all the advertising stuff, all the planning stuff. You're going to get taught that, right? Every agency does it a little bit differently. Every client does it a little bit differently. I can teach that stuff. Any strategy director, anyone can teach the nuts and bolts of how to do it, but how to present, how to write well in AI, we can see through all the AI writing. It's sloppy still. Like, and I am constantly going flipping between all the tools. I play with ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot. I'm playing with all of them almost every day. They're still not good enough writing to put in front of my clients. And so I'm still doing all my writing by myself. Learn how to write, learn how to present. Record yourself presenting. Work on your ticks. Get your butt in front of rooms of people and present to them and ask people to critique you. It's the people that can stand in front of a room and command a room. AI can't do that. AI is never going to be able to do that. Learn how to do it now. So that's some stuff I would look for in a beginning person.
Yeah, I tell my students the first day I meet them, there's two kinds of people in this world, those who love marketing and those who don't yet know they
Yeah.
love marketing. And I know at the end of the semester, I'm going to do my best to pull as many of them in, but I know that because I sat in that chair and then the next picture in the slide deck shows me in college holding my newborn baby because, I said I had too much fun, needless to say. And so I had to start being serious and making money.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't have, I just don't see I used to see more students that were really into marketing that, it, like you say, have some passion about it, man.
Well, I mean,
Where's
there's
the
there's
marketing nerds? Where'd they go? The people that are just into this stuff. I don't know what happened.
it's okay if you're not into it, but it's a tough industry and it's a hard life. And so you really need to love what you do. And if you don't think you're going to be into it, you're not going to be successful at it because there are people, I mean, I meet them all the time. They are hungry to be in this industry. And if that's not your jam, that's fine. Like go find the thing that is.
That is true. I mean, nothing worse than having a job you don't like to do, or you're not looking
Oh,
forward to going into work. I've been in that place. It's no fun.
yeah.
Um, and so let me think, what questions have I not asked yet? All right, let's talk a little bit more about AI.
Mm,
Um, do you really much feel that students should just get involved and play around with each of these different ones, like Claude and
100%. 100%. But what I find is like, I know I can get really efficient with AI because I know the questions to ask. And I know this has been said for a really long time. It's all about the prompting. Like, you got to learn what questions to ask and what you can use the engines for and what you can't use the engines for. I can use the engines for research, but like, for example, I was just working on a really big deliverable for a client where I had to get through reams of data really fast. So, I turned to one of the engines to help me do that. I gave the engine the framework that I wanted them to evaluate the data through. I did not ask it for the framework. I was like, this is the framework that I want to do. This is how I want you to evaluate it. And then I worked with a younger strategist to check every single thing that came out of the engines and make sure it was accurate. That's how I'm using AI right now. So it gives me a little bit of push forward, but I'm still giving it the parameters and I'm still checking everything because if I put a single statement in front of a client that's not true,
oh, that's bad. Yeah, 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 that's bad.
I'm screwed, right? I am not using it to write my strategies. I'm not using it to write my brand stories. I'm not using it to figure out my frameworks. I don't do it for any of that stuff. That stuff is still me on a whiteboard. And because here's the thing, here's what happens, especially when you get deeper and deeper into the business. I'm writing these strategies, I'm writing these stories, I'm writing these frameworks. You're never just handing something in. You're always presenting it. You're always debating it. You're always having to show clients how to apply it. And if you didn't write the thing and think it through and like really think it through, like, does this really make sense? Does this really work? The instant that someone starts pushing up against it, you're going to crumble. And it might work in college, handing in an English paper, because no, you don't challenge. This is the thing in our industry. You don't just walk in and sell shit. Are you kidding me? There's a whole art to selling something through. And you are going to get grilled on every deliverable. When I was a young creative, everything, every strategy I've ever handed in, every creative I've ever handed in, I've had to sell it. I've had to defend it. I've had to show that like I worked it through and I thought, yes, I hear your objection, but this is why we did it this way because we thought about that already. And so if you can't do that with a deliverable in the room, you will fall on your face. And so that's the difference, I think, a big difference between college and like the real world is that in advertising, you are constantly in a state of sell. That's why you have to get good at presenting. That's why you have to get good at writing. That's why you have to get good at writing presentations that are compelling because you have to sell it.
And so you
I
walked
can't.
in with an idea that you're confident you can sell. You
Oh
believe it.
yeah, and you've thought through all the objections already. You've thought through like what's going to come at you in that. And if I just have an AI engine spit out a strategy and then I walk in like, here's your strategy, and they start digging in, whoo, I'll
It'll
never,
be your last day.
it'll be my last day. I won't get hired again. I won't.
Well, I'm sure they're hiring you for your knowledge. That's for darn sure. Not for the way you use the AI. Um, let me think. I mean, you've covered these main points very well. I mean, you've shared some awesome information that these students can benefit from and take with them. Um,
Yeah,
let me think of anything else. Now I'm going to have them. Can they reach out to you on LinkedIn if there's some questions that obviously they thought of that I didn't? That they could reach out to you
for sure.
and
For sure.
LinkedIn. Okay,
I Yeah, LinkedIn's great. I check it at least every day. I don't answer it every day, but I check it every day. So
okay. Well, I thank you for doing this.
of course.
Again, these kids got some solid gold here on how branding really works, as well as things they should use. Absolutely, communication. I've always believed that's a way to stand out. Amongst your peers, get up on your feet and be a strong presenter, a strong writer. And so we're in agreement. And so students pay attention to this stuff. And so Heidi, I just want to thank you. I know we kept pushing this thing back. I'm glad you gave your precious time to help the Westchester branding students
I'm
um,
excited.
be better at this and be better marketers as a result.
Of course, I'm more than happy. And like, honestly, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm there and I'm happy to answer questions. Sometimes I'll answer it as a post as well. Like I'll take,
Awesome.
so like, just pay attention there as well.
Yeah, because I've been telling them to follow you, so I'm sure some are going to take you up on that.
All right, awesome.
Again, thank you again for your time, and this is awesome. And let's keep in touch.
Please, would love that.
All right.
All
Thanks.
right. Take
Bye
care.
bye.